This is Southern Evolt coming to you with another video on the Valtinsu EM-5. Today's video we're going to show you how to install an aluminum swing arm, which is much lighter than the stock steel swing arm. This swing arm will allow you to put on a 14-inch tire if you choose, or even go even bigger with a 16-inch rear tire. This upgrade will work for the Valtinsu EM-5, the Ionic Motor Alpha Mini, the Yosma IN-10, and the Throne Shadow Strike 48-volt version. In a minute, I'm going to show you what tools you're going to need and what parts you're going to need. I will leave a link in the description for everything that I used on this build. Thank you. I'll be right back with you. First thing you're going to want to do is remove the swing arm and the tire from the back of the bike. The tools that you will need: you also need to remove the side cover to get the chain off. You'll need a 14mm wrench, a 13mm wrench, 10mm wrench, 5mm Allen, 4mm Allen, a chain brake, a few ratchets, a 19mm socket, a 17mm socket, 14mm socket, a 12mm socket, and a 10mm socket. You will need some grease to grease all your bolts when you reinstall them. Of course, here's the swing arm. Nice, beautiful aluminum, much lighter than the heavy factory steel swing arm. There's only two ways to properly use this swing arm on these bikes. You can put a sleeve in the middle like I did. It's a 7-inch long aluminum sleeve that is to protect the long bolt from getting damaged, bent, or putting extra stress on the bolt. If you do not want to use the long bolt and purchase an aluminum tube, you can use two 2.5-inch long 10mm bolts. You will need two 10mm washers, a 10mm lock washer, and a 10mm nut. You will need that for all of them. You will also need the same size nut, 2.5-inch 10mm nut, two washers, and that is for your new bolt to mount the shock. You can transfer the brake line over to this just fine. I also purchased this bracket right here. I bent it just ever so slightly. This is going to attach on the swing arm here and hold the mud flap in place so it doesn't rub the tire. You will also need to purchase a 9.5-inch 15mm axle bolt. The spacer on this side will be the same. It's going to be the same exact size that was on the stock swing arm. However, the spacer on the other side will need to be longer. I did not have a long enough one, so I used two to make up the space that I needed. And I will give you a length in 1 second. It is an inch and 3/8 is how long the spacer needs to be. You will also need to install the little bracket for the mud flap. You will need two 5mm Allen screws and some washers and a lock nut. And you also, if you want to change the tire size, I'm going with a 14 on the back and a 17 on the front. This swing arm right here will fit a 16-inch rear tire, which is great. That gives people other options. You can run a 17-16 dirt setup to get you a little bit more height out of the bike. Of course, if you did that, you're going to want to upgrade the suspension for the front, which I'm currently working on that for everybody. Working with a supplier to make a longer set of forks for the EM-5 for this upgrade. We're going to go from a 630 millimeter to a 735 millimeter front fork to give us extra height. Alright, I'm going to start installing everything, and I'll be back with you. To install the swing arm, using the long bolt, it will be a 14 millimeter on one side and a 12 millimeter on the other side. If you are going to use the two short bolts, one on either side, it will be a 14 millimeter wrench and a 14 millimeter socket that you will need for the two separate bolts if you choose to use the two separate bolts on either side like this. And then you will need a 14-inch or 14 millimeter wrench for one side of your shock and a 14 millimeter socket for the other side. And then I'm going to mount the camera somewhere so you guys can see how I'm going to mount this bracket to the swing arm into the mud guard. I'll be right back in 1 second. I forgot to mention to you guys, on either side of the swing arm, you're going to have to use 2 of your 10 millimeter washers on either side of the swing arm, because the swing arm is just a little bit thinner than the space. But with the 2 washers on either side, it makes it a tight fit. Thank you. Okay, to install this bracket, you're going to need one of your 5 millimeter Allen screws with a washer, and you're going to start by just putting it in here. You're not going to tighten it all the way because you want it to be able to move to attach the mud guard to it. You're going to take your other 5 millimeter screw, and you're going to put that through the mud guard, and you're going to use the washers on the other side of the bracket. I had to use 2 washers because I didn't have the right washer. I'm using a bigger washer with a smaller washer behind it. But you'll need a 5 millimeter ID locking nut. Once you get the mud guard pretty much where you want it, you can pull the bracket all the way up till it meets the screw and tighten it up to the swing arm. There is already a hole in the swing arm right here for this reason. I just didn't feel like paying the price for the actual bracket that goes here, so I went to the hardware store and got my own alternative that was cheaper. And you need the 10 millimeter wrench for the small bolt on the back side to make sure this is tightened up all the way. There you go. One secure mud guard. Not going to bother your tire anymore. Not going to tear up and disintegrate your mud guard and make you have to buy a new one. Next step, we're going to install the rear tire. you're going to want to grease your axle. I already have ahead of time. I greased the axle with the grease that I have over there. I've already greased all my bolts ahead of time. You're going to want the small spacer to go on the brake side. And I'll explain one other thing that I forgot to explain. Let me move this out of the way. I was unable to find a new bracket for the brakes. The factory brake mount has a 12mm hole. I used a bore bit on my drill and made the hole 15mm so I could fit the 15mm axle in there. And the reason for this is because this swing arm is made for a 15mm axle. You do not want to put a 12mm axle in there because it will be floating and it will bend or break, damage your bike, or get yourself hurt. That was the whole purpose of putting that sleeve up there. That protects that bolt from getting hit, bent, or having extra stress on it. That's the purpose of the sleeve up there. You want to start your axle into the brake mount. Then on this side, to make it easier on yourself, if you have to two-piece it like I did, put the big one on first, then put the small one on. This is where the 19 and 17 socket come into play. The nut on the axle is your 19 and the bolt is the 17. Always put your nut on the left side of the bike. This will help prevent from getting loose as you ride. And the reason why is because as the axle and tire are spinning forward, it's always tightening the nut. Listen to that quiet brake. No noise. And the same goes for the front. You always want your nut to be on that left side. That way, physics takes over and is keeping your bolt tight. Now, for the chain, you will need a minimum of 124 links for the chain. If you decide to go a little bit more forward than I did, you can go with less than 124. But I like being right in the middle of the swing arm, right in the middle of that gap. That gives me plenty of adjustment for forward and backwards. I wanted to show y'all one other piece I picked up. This is a shock cover. I know a lot of you guys do not like the orange of the shock on the bike. And with this sleeve, you don't have to worry about changing the shock, painting the shock, taking it apart and putting a different color spring on. You just get these. They're $9.99 a pair on Amazon. They just Velcro right on. They keep your shock clean and keep it lasting longer because you're keeping it clean. You can also get yourself a chain guard, not a chain guide, because of the big sprocket. A chain guide will not work back here, but a chain guard will, which is just a single piece. And I will show you how to install this bigger O-ring chain that I got. It's pretty much the same as putting a regular chain on, except you have some O-rings you have to deal with. So, easy way to put this chain in there is I like to take the chain in from the bottom over top of the roller, pull extra chain through, and then put it on the front sprocket. That always works better for me. You guys might have a different method. But if you look, you can see the little rubber O-rings on there. You have to have 2 O-rings on there first to put the master link in. Then you got to take 2 more O-rings and put them on this side. It doesn't matter which way they go. And you want to take the main part, put it on, make sure you pull nice and tight. Then always take your key, your master link key. The opening will always be faced towards the back of the bike. Always. There you go. Once you get all that done, you can take and put your side cover back on. Everything's all tightened up and greased. With the new chain, it's a lot more quiet. I have noticed on my tire that one side of the knobbies is a little different than the other, and it makes the tire wobble. The tire is actually, y'all can hear if my rim was bent or something like that, you would hear it in the brake. There's no noise, no rubbing, so it's all in the tire. That's what that wobble was. But that's it, guys. That's how you upgrade the rear swing arm on the bike. So you can fit a 14 or 16-inch rear tire. I hope y'all enjoyed this content. If y'all would like to see this upgrade in action, leave me a comment. If you've liked this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and I will catch y'all in the next video. Have a great day.